And welcome back for another thrills, chills, and possibly spills episode of Rodney and Alfie Talk Metal. I'm one half of your host team here, Rodney McGee. You can find me on YouTube if you are so inclined under Rodney McGee. The other half of this devilish equation is...
That would be me. I am Alfie Williams, and you will find me on YouTube if you type in Witch Base, and there will be more content coming. I'm working on it. Don't worry. I haven't forgotten.
And for clarity's sake, just for people who don't know you as well, witch is spelled how?
I'm having a stroke. What?
Which as in something that rides a broom? Or...
No, not that one. You gave me a stroke. No, the other witch, the questionary witch.
All right.
I've never been asked that, so thank you. Okay, that's a first. I'll be ready next time.
Yeah, figured that one out. For
don't
people...
tell me you got comments about that.
No, I figure for people who don't know you, well, you know, the one guy in a cave somewhere that has yet to be resurrected or something, you know, because who doesn't know Alfie? But go into that.
It reminds me of, do you know Dave Hill? He's a comedian. Yeah. He's a big metal guy. He's a comedian. He has his own radio show online. And he does this, he's a very deadpan comedian. And he does this skit where every show he'll play, and here's the song Angel Witch by the band Angel Witch from the album Angel Witch. So now you got me confused with that.
All right. Well, up on the docket for this week, I had a couple of topics here, but wanted to do some what's going on currently and things. And one thing kind of gave me a bit of a giggle and a little bit of a debate. Machine Head is back, or also known as the band formerly known as Rob Flynn by himself. But they put out a new song, and I believe it's called Choke on the Ashes of Your Hate. I dig it. Rough, aggressive, all the things I kind of like, fast riffs, good stuff. And it's good to see Rob doing that type of thing. The funny thing to me is, though, is that Rob seems to be kind of this chameleon that I can't figure out quite. You know, like when they came out and they got popular on like Burn My Eyes, and they had big songs like Davidian and stuff. They went from that into Supercharger, which was this very new metal thing. And all of a sudden he's dressing all hip hop and has cornrows and, you know, just this really strange transformation. And usually when a band does that, that's kind of like the, you know, oh, they're selling out, trying to do something else, and they don't come back from it. You know, it's like, oh, this is our new direction, and that's it. But he actually, you know, seemed to kind of take the hit from the fans and people telling him, hey, man, this is crap. And he went back and then came out with Through the Ashes of Empires, probably my favorite album from them, just straight thrash. I mean, that album top to bottom. And then he does that for a couple albums. Then the video for the song Catharsis came out, and it's like he's wearing white, and it seems like it's really borrowed from the more modern type of emo influenced metal and stuff like that. It did not go over well. When your whole band quits, that's usually a sign you've kind of drifted off the freeway and stuff. And again, I kind of went, well, there it is again, you know, just kind of wrote him off and everything. And then he comes back with this new stuff, and I'm like, dude, I keep like it starting to get off the boat, and you keep pulling me back in. So I keep going like, will the real Machine Head please stand up? I can't figure out, you know, and he's a founding member of the band Violence, you know, Bay Area legendary thrash band. So, I mean, he needs no, you know, credibility backup for his history and everything. But it's like, okay, are you a guy who really, really wants to go pop really bad and really wants to get famous and kind of sell out a bit? And you just keep trying to find the road that's going to let you do it, whether it's new metal, hip hoppy, or if it's going to be sounding like the New Kids or whatever it is, and you just can't do it? Or are you a thrash guy who that's where your heart really is, but you just get some idiot that barks stuff in your ear or the label pressure or something. Like I can't figure out which one is the real pose. Are you a pop guy posing as metal and you have a long enough history that you're just damn good at writing these riffs and you can write a rabid album at the drop of a hat? Or are you this rabid thrash guy that keeps, every once in a while getting some kind of pressure or something and having to sell out to, get one of these things? I can't figure out which it is. It's like, okay, which is the pose? I don't get it. It just kind of cracks me up because, like I said, every time I go to, write the guy off, he comes back. And I don't think I can pinpoint another band that's done that. Usually, like, once you get knocked down and you sell out in front of the fans and stuff, you're kind of done.
Mhm.
Your credibility's gone. But dude comes back not like, oh, okay, we went back to our old style type of thing. He comes back so hard that you just go like, all right, man, I'll forgive you. It's like that ex-girlfriend that's like that good in bed that you just like, she threw some stuff at your head. That's it. We're done. Over. I'm not doing this anymore. And then she comes back and spends the night and you're like, all right, man. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that was pretty good. Okay, cool.
I'm very confused by the whole thing. I mean, I'm not very well acquainted with Machine Head. I'm familiar with Rob Flynn to a degree. And like you say, he does have this chameleon sort of aspect to him. And I'll be honest, I find him a bit too abrasive from what I've seen. I'm not rooting for him on a personal level, if that makes sense. Like he rubs me up the wrong way. And I haven't seen this in action, so to speak, so I haven't really lived it as you have.
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine he might have this itch, like those guys are having a good time. They look like they're having fun. I don't know. Maybe you're in like a serious band and you see Kid Rock and go, I want to chill out by the pool and drink beer and just like relax and kick back and write something stupid. So you might do that once, but to keep going round in a circle and just cycle this stuff is where I get a bit confused.
Yeah, I don't get that. And I totally get the personal thing too. He's had some really bad takes on some stuff. And, it's kind of like, you're not a political science major. You should probably shut up. You're also not the smartest person on the block. Stop weighing in on stuff because you want to be the, thrash Corey Taylor or something. Just shut up, play your songs. But yeah, I've never seen anything quite like that exact example. I can see people who, kind of went off and, then came back a little bit. I feel like Megadeth did that for a bit. They kind of went after Countdown to Extinction, kind of wandered off the prairie. And then, what album was it? They came back with songs like This Day We Fight and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, it's
one of the newer ones.
Yeah. Okay. You're swinging back, DC is next and that kind of thing. So, and they tend to do the same thing. Then they have like Super Collider, whatever that was. And you're like, dude. And then the last album came out and it's, not packed full of great stuff, but I'm like, okay, you're back on track. They kind of do it, but it's within this kind of certain range of stuff. Whereas Flynn just seems to go like, okay, hardcore thrash legend, going to put out an album. Next time I'm Eminem and I have cornrows now. It's like, what the? No. And then all of a sudden he can just come back from it. And it's like, okay, long hair again, long beard, thrashing out again. Oh, cool. That's good. New album. I'm crying all the way through the song. What? No. I've never seen a case where somebody could just swerve that hard continuously and come back that much, and be forgiven by fans for it too.
What's your take on, I guess, I don't know how to phrase it properly, the story of Machine Head, where, like I said, I'm not familiar with their history that much, but is there a difference between Rob Flynn, the singer, and Machine Head? And in the sense that usually if you want to do, in a drastic example, a rap album, you would do it solo. You would say, you know, Rob Flynn, my rap on tape. I don't know,
Mhm.
whatever. And then you come back and do Machine Head as the main thing. So is there like an ego problem here where Machine Head can be whatever I want it to be, and that kind of take?
Yeah, it's very much that. I mean, Machine Head is Rob Flynn, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he's had great players who've contributed and stuff, uh yeah, you can tell when a change of the guard happens. Like when he did Supercharger, there was a lineup change. You know, they got a new guitar player in who was only on for that album and stuff, and then that changed when they went back to the thrash. Uh After the Catharsis train wreck, it said the whole band quits. And then he hires up a new band, comes back with the new sound, chugs away. So it I'm like I said, I'm not minimizing the contributions from the other players. You know, there's other great ones, especially like Phil Demmel, who sits in with like everybody now. Uh and I'm sure he's contributing to the music too, but the sound and the image and the vibe, it's very much, you know, Rob Flynn's the flag bearer for Machine Head. So yeah, just really kind of weird that he could just pull these left turns every once in a while, and the fans come out and go, don't do that, don't ever do that again. And he comes back, he's like, all right, I'm sorry, here's the chugs.
Here's what you want,
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
The only example I can think of, and I might have brought it up before,
Mhm.
is Papa Roach, where their first album was, I guess to put it very simply, the new metal thing. There's the hip hop vibes and that kind of um, influence in there and that kind of thing. And then the newer stuff, I guess after their fourth or fifth album, is all EDM. Well, it started off as harmless rock and roll, so you might get that sort of Machine Head vibe where, okay, he's toned down a little, he's mature, he's mellow, he's conservative, fine. And I remember Jacoby saying, on this record, I want it to be a rock star. I just want to sing my heart out. And that was very clearly shown in the record. He was singing rather than the rapping and the screaming and that sort of thing. And then it progressed onto the dance and EDM stuff. And that's nearly the same sort of story as Machine Head, but the only difference is they haven't gone back to their roots. They're still in
Mhm.
this, well, they've evolved and they've stayed there. So that's
Mhm.
kind of the only difference I can see where Papa Roach and other bands like that have an evolution of their sound and who they are, and they stay that way, fine.
Yeah.
But it sounds like Machine Head don't know who they want to be and who their audience is.
Yeah, or like I said, I feel like there's a very clear him going out and doing something, and then when it shits the bed, basically, you know, he gets Amber Hearded onto something that the audience smacks him in the face. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." It's like the dog that chewed up the furniture. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'll stop writing that shit." And then he goes back and he comes back with, you know, a harder album than the last one. And that's what I find most interesting is that you can see him respond immediately to what happens whenever he goes off the rails or something. The fans go, "No, bad Flynn, bad." And he's like,
War Pistol.
"Oh, I'm sorry, I'll bring back the chugs." Okay. It just goes off there. So yeah, I've never seen something to where not only do they duck out to more convenient styles or try to be trendy, but they're able to come back, immediately see, okay, the band didn't like this, the fans didn't like this, I'm gonna go back to this shit. And then, you know, it's like all is forgiven. All right, we're gonna give you two more albums. Don't screw this up. Uh yeah, it's just kind of this weird prodigal son kind of thing where he just keeps wandering off the range, and the fans have to go, no, no, Rob, no, pull the leash back. Yeah.
This just sounds like an ego problem where you oh, what's the saying? I can't think of one of these ego sayings now. You believe in yourself so much, you're like, no, I'm right. They're gonna dig it, they like it. And instead
Mm-hmm.
of sort of testing the waters with maybe a single or a solo project, like I said, like, no, I'm gonna devote a whole album to this, and they're gonna like it. They
Yeah.
will. And like I said, from my experience of Rob Flynn, that's the kind of vibe I get. It's my way or the highway. And then it changes mine later on. I don't know. It just, I always found him a weird character
Yeah.
for these types of reasons. He's just sort of headstrong without a fully formed opinion.
Yeah. So he's basically everybody I've met ever. So, but anyway, with that coming out, I thought that was kind of just a funny and interesting point to see that, because again, a friend of mine sent it to me and I didn't watch the video for like 3 days. I was just like, God, what now? You know, was done with Machine Head, and now I found myself queuing it up and, you know, hitting the gym and listening to that song. So just warn me ahead of time, Rob. Tell me when you're going to drop the turd in the punch bowl so I can tune out for an album, and then I'll come back next time. I'm not sure what you're doing, but every other one is awesome. So, but yeah, that, and I thought a fun one for discussion here would be too, and well deserved. But Judas Priest just got the notice they're going to be doing the induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which, not that I lend much credence to that or anything, but it's, you know, it's good to see, you know, a band that's been together since, you know, Dirt, you know, finally get their due and everything, and they are, you know, the metal godfathers in a big way. So that's cool to see. And there was also the talk too about how, you know, Maiden, because it seems like they kind of run this course together, wasn't nominated or brought in. And I remember that coming up, that, you know, the two rival kings of the new wave of British heavy metal were definitely, you know, Maiden and Priest. And there wasn't so much a war in like you could only like one, but definitely you had people who leaned into the Priest camp and people who leaned into the Maiden camp. So there was this like good-natured rivalry about who was, you know, really the best of the kind of thing. So my first question, this would be interesting to me, would be, on your side of the pond, was that the same thing going on in Britain?
How can I answer this? From what I gather, I mean, Maiden was a bit before my time. I came into Maiden in the 2000s, so their hype and their peak was before me. So I kind of had I don't know, the echoes or the tremors of those kind of things coming up. So it's hard to tell it's hard to say what happened at the time. But from my experience, I'm not quite sure what what the people before me would have called metal, whether they would have called it the new wave of British heavy metal. They would have just called it metal. So I don't know if they would have had the discrepancies between the two. It's really tough. I don't know. I don't know what it was like originally. I think, I mean, I'm only guessing here from bits I've seen. I think Judas Priest had a lot more TV time on like Top of the Pops and things like that. They were a bit more accessible rather than Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden was a bit more, not technical, technical is the wrong word, but a bit more guitar orientated, where Priest, if we're looking at perceptions here, Priest was a bit more a lifestyle, like anyone could listen to Priest and get into it and sing along and that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Like, I guess Maiden is more for musicians and Priest was a bit more for casual people who liked heavy stuff. And that's kind of how I've seen it, where that makes sense to me that Priest is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because to me, they seem more accessible than Maiden.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're definitely on about that one. I think to me, the division I saw in between them is Priest was the epitome of classic working man's metal. You know, they talked about, you know, fast cars or a party or just, you know, kicking ass or something like that. And you're going to be hard pressed to find a song longer than 5.5 minutes. You know, Iron Maiden, you've got like an occasional Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner or something like that, where they're going to go on forever. and they kind of went after that mantle of like the thinking man's metal band. Uh, always talking about history or something like that, or
Lord of the
some
Rings or whatever.
yeah, uh, and longer arrangements, things like that. The one thing that I feel like was different here that is kind of funny is that I feel like during the apex, at least during the States, when Maiden was at the height of its exposure, I think was around the Somewhere in Time album.
Mhm.
With MTV, those videos were inescapable. Let me think, like Sea of Madness was huge. Wasted Years was massive. I mean, massive for them over here. You would see those videos and a couple other from that album all the time. And I can remember, that live set, I can remember every outfit and everything. I could see it so much. Whereas Priest didn't have that much during that era. They were really big for a while with the Turbo album, but that was kind of considered their Rob Flynn moment, like easy guys. So there was that, but this is, a little bit later, and yeah, it's like Maiden's presence, at least, especially on MTV, was just bigger. And so I find that kind of interesting that it was like the prog band, because they kind of found, I think, on that album, a medium in between like writing the progressive stuff and being able to put some good choruses and stuff together, and especially their live presentation, it was a big spectacle and everything.
Definitely.
But yeah, I always found that a little ironic that the more prog oriented band kind of hit it, at least in the States, at a little bit of a bigger visual presence level than Priest did. And I used to go back and forth a bit, this thing of like, Maiden to me was huge, especially as a bassist, being influenced by Harris and stuff like that. When I discovered the Live After Death album and the live video, that thing was on constant rotation, me just watching that album. So Power Slave and Somewhere in Time were just, massive over here. And even though it's, it's somewhat that era, like Screaming for Vengeance from Priest, like one of my favorite albums from them, did well, but there was like one song and it just didn't have the, just hammering, hit after hit that the Maiden albums seemed to have. Cause before you had like 2 Minutes to Midnight and stuff like that, they just seemed to have a bigger presence. So I always saw it as those were the two sides. It's like, Judas Priest was the beer drinking, driving your Camaro around, doing donuts in the parking lot kind of thing. And Maiden was the, I'm partying, but I'm thinking while I'm partying.
I would agree with that. And it's weird that I'm, in my perception, in the back of my mind, for when I try and compare the two bands. See, my problem is I've watched a lot of American documentaries about metal. There's not that many British ones. There's only a handful, which I might have seen. But from my opinion, it feels like prog rock was much bigger in the US. Maybe not bigger, but it had a very popular period. So you had things like Rush and many. I'm not a big prog fan, so I can't mention that many. But bands like Rush that were very progressive, and Iron Maiden fit the bill, and I could see them being quite big. Where, like I said earlier, Priest was a bit more. I don't want to say karaoke. Karaoke is the wrong word for Priest, but they're just easy to listen to. They're just working man's metal, and Iron Maiden gave you a little bit more. And also, I think for me, growing up, I drifted to Maiden because of Steve Harris, like you said. Like that just, you go, what is that? That is weird. And also, Maiden were from the East End of London. I'm from London. There's sort of this, not a rivalry, but you go, that's my team. I can get on board with them because like they're just down the tube line, it's fine. Where Priest was a couple of 100 miles away in Birmingham, I don't know. It's just a tribalism thing. You go, I'm on team Iron Maiden, and it just seems like little things like that, you know, just these tiny little things that say that's my team. And also the thing that is a bit sticks out to me, I'm not sure about the time periods, but it kind of reminds me of Kiss, where Kiss had a huge spectacle with the costumes and they had huge shows. Mm-hmm. And then when you actually listen to them, they don't sound like, you said this last week, they don't sound like what they look like. And to me, I had the same thing with Priest, where Priest looked metal as fuck, all the leather, all the studs and everything. But then you got this falsetto voice. So like, there's a discrepancy here. But at least with Iron Maiden, it looks the way it sounds. And I think that's where I got a bit disjointed musically.
Gotcha. Okay. I could see that.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I didn't interpret like, you know, his falsetto quite the same way that you do. I could see how someone might. For me too, I think it was, how can I say, and kind of this almost ties back into the Machine Head thing, that you see bands that are successful doing what they do that have carved out a style that they have these arcs. And I've seen the same arc happen with Maiden and Priest, and that they hit a peak and then they just kind of roll out of it for a while. Like with Priest, they, you know, they basically sold out really heavily commercially with that, you know, Turbo album and stuff. They got really big doing it, but then, you know, they lost their core audience. And then that kind of rolled out with Halford leaving, and they got Ripper Owens in. And even though arguably there's some great tunes on it, it just wasn't the same for most people. They're playing much smaller places. This is, to be fair, also around the time of grunge and shit like that. But that happened earlier than Maiden's kind of go under, you know, after Somewhere in Time, you know, Seventh Son still did kind of okay. And then they kind of went under. And I know I'm going to piss off all the Maiden fans there. I don't think they've resurfaced again yet. Because, you know, Priest came back with Painkiller and just, you know, socked everybody in the balls with it. When Halford came back, it was just like, you know, appropriately song titled on there, All Guns Blazing. I mean, that album holds up now. It is just savage. And I feel like Maiden kind of went out at the same time, and they didn't go quite as far out as like Priest did with Turbo and stuff. But I feel like they were just in a holding pattern of like, we're going to kind of give you the same album, slightly better, slightly worse, maybe a little better production, maybe a little worse. And I have, you know, unfortunately the same opinion kind of on the new album. It's just like, this feels like phoning it in Maiden to me. That was kind of my review on it. Little slow for me, not for a band that has such a legendary prog thing to not have the bass fills, and the, you know, I just feel like a lot of it was lacking. But Priest has done it kind of again when they came back with Firepower. I mean, these dudes are like, what, 130 now?
Yeah.
And I said, Firepower, that song, the second I heard that, I was like, indeed, sir. It's like, this is classic Judas Priest, punch you in the balls metal. That was, you know, they are back. And I was hoping Maiden would have that moment too, that both of them would have this, like, you know, our last efforts are, you know, the shining star here. So that's why I keep going like, all right, Maiden, just hold it together for one more and just give me Number of the Beasts. Give me, you know, something in there. You know, the Priest is going out on a good note here, but, you know, so it is strange how it differs between those two, but I definitely think it's kind of that same thing. It does go back to, you know, when Firepower came out, the thing that made it strong was that thing like, I'm going to yell Firepower when it comes to the chorus. You know, I'm not going to quote from my history book about Marco Polo's adventures or something. So
There's so much to unpack here. I don't want to put my foot in my mouth, but where do I want to begin? Again, I think from a songwriting standpoint, Priest is just much more snappy, and it just you pick it up, you listen to it, you put it down, and that's it. And Maiden, of course, they have massive tunes that you can. It depends. Sometimes you can get into it if it's like several minutes long, but I think the quicker the song, I don't know, what am I thinking of here? You don't want to outstay your welcome. And sometimes in more recent times, Maiden has done that too many times to count, where it's just like, okay, well, is there anything else you're going to add to this song? And it's just the same pieces over and over. But on the flip side, in my adolescence, I found Iron Maiden more within culture than Priest. Like, for example, in video games, you had Iron Maiden in GTA. Mm-hmm. A lot more documentaries to talk about Maiden as the AAA listers of metal and that sort of thing. And again, there might be a bias there with the documentaries I was watching. They don't really talk about Priest. They would say Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden. They skip that step. Yeah. So I think there's a bias. They go, Black Sabbath are their grandfathers. Oh, here's Iron Maiden. And so there's kind of that too. What else? And maybe just
see that there is that here. I definitely feel like if you were to ask even fans or something, honestly, in the States, like, rank these two, it's, Maiden first, Priest just slightly behind. They just didn't have the same presence. They remember like the hits and everything, but a lot of them don't, remember the past albums of, they don't remember Stained Class or, Sad Wings of Destiny. They're just not going to know that. But people here do know Killers. They know Number of the Beast. They know the self-titled. There's definitely an awareness of the extensive catalog where you say Priest here and most people go like, oh, Painkiller, or You Got Another Thing Coming, or, something like that. It's always going to be something like that. So in a way, like, and I think it's how most prog bands would be, in that people are going to know a catalog more than the hits. And Priest had more of the hits, but that's kind of the irony of it, is that the one that you have to do the deeper dive into is actually the one that had more presence. So, neither one not deserving of recognition or anything, but I definitely, there was that somewhat rivalry. Like, I can remember, I don't know how many times being a kid and people having that moment of like, okay, man, but if you had to pick one, Judas Priest or Iron Maiden, and then people be like, oh, come on, man, look, Flight of Icarus, breaking the law, dude. You would have this thing going on, in between them.
I struggle. I really struggle. And I'm not saying that Priests don't deserve that. I think they do. And I think if you had to press me right now and say which one deserves it, I think I'd say Priest over Maiden, because I just feel like it's so difficult to say. I don't want to put Maiden down, but I feel like Priest, their singles are much more, that they're much more accessible and easy to listen to, where Maiden, maybe you would appreciate them more if you're a musician like you or I, studying Harris, go, Steve Harris is a fucking god. Like, yeah, I know. But like, I've never felt that way with Ian, what's his name? Ian, I can't remember his name, but the bassist. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've never felt that way about Ian Hill. I've never felt that way about Priest. Like, and that's the thing. They come on the Priest come on the radio a lot when I'm in the house, whatever. And I go, this is a killer song. And I dig it. And I'm really into the song and I like it. But I'm not going to pick up a bass and play along. Mm-hmm. But that's just from a bassist point of view. Where Iron Maiden, you hear Hallowed Be Thy Name, you're like, I need to play this because that lick is amazing. Like, I don't know. It's just you can't compare them. But I just think on a songwriting level, I think Priest tick more boxes than Maiden?
Now, see, as always, I'm going to push back a little bit based on one thing because
Go
we're
on.
judging a lot on radio play.
Yeah.
But when you look at Iron Maiden's consistent ability to tour, because, it's the actual audience that matters with this stuff, Maiden can sell out every year, every tour, stadiums, arenas. I mean, they can go to Brazil on 5 minutes notice and have hundreds of thousands of people
That's
out
true.
there.
Absolutely.
They can go to Vakken, headline, no question. If they say we're playing, you know who the final night headliner is. There is no band that's going to get out in front of Maiden. They can play Japan, they can play Indonesia, they can play Australia, and it will just slam every time. And even on their off albums, they'll be able to do that. I don't see Priest being able to do that same thing.
No.
Which, to me, that's, especially since metal is more of a live thing, and it's because we don't always get the MTV coverage. Well, when there was MTV coverage, or videos, or media exposure, or radio, it has to go off of who's willing, do the fans show up to see you? That tells you the fan favorite. And, 5 years ago, God bless them or something, but I don't know if, say, Priest going to Australia would be as huge an event, or them going to Argentina, or that, whereas, I mean, literally you have to have a singer who has his own plane to cart the damn band around because they go so much in Maiden. So I think, while Priest has the accessible songs, metal doesn't always rely on that as much. That may get them more radio play, but does it sit with the fans?
Mm-hmm.
And from what I can see, like I said, when they play over here, half the time they have to do double dates. They, they're going to be playing in my area soon, and the ticket prices are insane.
Mm-hmm.
And it's already looking like a sellout.
Yeah.
Like, how the hell, like, how does this shit happen? So fan wise, if we're talking about who will pay money and show up, I think Maiden kind of takes it that in that arena, they show that, yeah, you may get on the radio and do this stuff because it fits in a radio format and it's easy. But when metal fans are given their voice, they kind of go Maiden.
Yeah, I totally get that. And, I remember that Maiden documentary, Flight 666.
Yeah.
That one. And you're dead right. They played India or the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
And there is, even though they have like shit amplifiers for their PA that are like 50 years old, there's a magic in the air. And it was undeniable. The fans are just buzzing to see Maiden. I can't see that with Priest. And you're right, I get that. And now we have to have the conversation, well, what does Rock and Roll Hall of Fame actually mean? Who's it for? Is it for the fans or is it for the industry? Because taking your point, if it's for the fans, then it would be Maiden, because Maiden's fans are buying the tickets and the albums and everything else and keeping them going. And like I said, Priest have never been a massive part of my musical taste. I enjoy them and I think they make good songs, but I've never deep dived into them. But again, there's my biases in there because I like the musicianship of Maiden more than the songwriting of Priest. So again, now we'll talk about audience again. So I don't know. What do you think about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Who's it for? Like, what's the purpose? What message are they trying to give here?
I don't really give a crap about it. I've always thought it was garbage. And to, especially with the conversation we just had about, gatekeeping and stuff, I feel like it's kind of the normie world giving credit to a musical form that's never given a shit about them and kind of purposefully didn't want to be a part of it. It's like getting Death Metal Album of the Year presented to you by, Mariah Carey. Who gives a shit? And as we've seen with award shows going all the way back to, Metallica versus Jethro Tull and stuff like that, it's like these are not aware people.
No.
So, I bring it up because Priest is getting this and everything, but, as far as how legitimate I find them, I think it's crap. The only thing I had in the back of my head why I thought, because they interviewed someone from the Academy and they were going like, yeah, Maiden's on our radar, Def Leppard is, it's just sometimes, we're looking at who, deserves it at a certain time or when it's the right time. And it kind of got me thinking, and, bummer as it is and everything, it's like Priest is dying out faster than Maiden is. And I seriously wonder if that had something to do with it as well. It's kind of like Maiden, everybody's still kind of hanging around doing their thing, even though they don't need 3 guitar players and stuff. Everybody's still on board. Nobody's having a hard time. When you've got Downing, who's out of the band, then you've got Halford's been in and out. You can see it's taken a toll on him.
Yeah.
And then especially with like Tipton having Parkinson's, even the, come lately of Richie has like a pulmonary episode on stage, damn near dies on stage. You've got people filling in. You got Andy Sneap, their producer, sitting in for stuff. And then you have to get somebody to sit in even for Richie Faulkner. And it's like, whew, we better get these guys their award. This is, we're going to be presenting it to them in the back of an ambulance if we don't speed this up a little bit. So I can't help but wonder if that had a little bit with it, and maybe offering a little grace to Glenn Tipton too, that, he can come out and play like 1 or 2 songs per thing. It's like, let him go and accept it to where he's not going to have to look like Stephen Hawking up there or something. Let the man come up on 2 feet and, get his induction and do it with some dignity and stuff. So I can kind of see that one where they might go, yeah, maybe next year for Maiden. We're gonna try and get this before, the Reaper takes another one.
I think you're right. That is a part of it. And that was something else I was going to add. Well, with Black Sabbath, you have the forefathers of metal. They have to be mentioned somewhere at some time. And there's this legacy, right? You think of all the greats, Black Sabbath, Priest. I don't really know what the time frame is between, let's just say, the height of Priest and the beginning or height of Maiden. I don't know if there's an overlap there. I presume 5 years, no more than 5 or 10. Mm-hmm. I don't know, legacy comes to mind, or just paying your dues. It's Priest time, maybe.
Yeah. There's that, both of them I think are kind of in the same boat to one degree or another. But yeah, I definitely get a suspicion that, out of the 3 of them, when you're looking at like Leopard, Maiden, and Priest, it's like, okay, who's more likely to die first? It's like, okay, we're already ticking the boxes here with Priest. They're barely hanging on here, so might want to rush that one up a little bit. But it's really interesting. And like I said, you look at it from the 2 perspectives, and I think it says a lot about metal at the end of the day, that Priest, although they're, godfathers and undeniable, they've written, some of the best metal ever. But that when you look at things on the actual, what do the fans care about? What really goes on in the sessions and stuff and in the live shows, that's where you see the stark difference in between them, and that it's actually the longer songs, the less commercial tunes, even though they have a few and the hits do well and everything. The metal audience goes for the stuff that's got more behind it. Those are going to be their favorite albums. And that's kind of why I think their later stuff just, it's just kind of circling the thing, because I think they took their sound kind of as far as they could go with it, and peaked. And now they're kind of like, well, what do we do? That, where are you going to go with it? And whereas Priest can kind of, like, they'll do things like Nostradamus and things like that, where they'll wander out into kind of Maiden territory with some stuff. And then they snap back and give you firepower or something. You're like, oh, right, rock and roll. Give me another Budweiser. So that, you know, they still keep kind of coming back and feeding you the hey, remember when kind of thing. But
so do you feel that Maiden have kind of made their own bed? So they're just kind of stuck on like the several minute prog thing, and they can't really get out of that because that's what the fans want. That's what they buy. That's what they're going to give them. So they've made a rod for their own back.
well, no, I feel like the two pieces of what make up Iron Maiden have kind of for them melded into one piece, and that's where the real grave is. You know, it's like I always looked at Maiden as being two things. One, I'm going to get a long, thoughtful song that kind of moves at a moderate pace and has a lot of different interesting textures and things in it, you know. And then I'm going to have some high energy kick in the nuts stuff. You know, I'm going to get my, you know, Aces High. I'll get Wrathchild, you know, Run to the Hills, stuff like that. And then, you know, I'm going to get Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner and Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner and, you know, stuff where, you know, I'm going to pay a bit more attention on this one. I'm just not going to rock out the whole time. So you had those two things. And at least my impression from Maiden now is that they've kind of put those two together in that they'll get a good hook kind of riff or part that's very Maiden-esque, but they stretch that out as long as the prog song. So it's not like, oh, there's like 20 different parts to this song. There's 3 parts. They just keep repeating them over and over.
Yeah.
And it never gets really fast and it never gets really slow. It's so you don't get one or the other. You just get this kind of amalgamation of right through the center, very milquetoast kind of thing. And it's like, okay, either start yelling and kick up the tempo or just go bananas somewhere, but give me one or the other. Like, excite me or make me think, but right now you're boring me. You know, it's like right at that tempo where I can't keep my attention on it. And it's like, okay, I realize, yes, you're very thoughtful and you had like a book full of lyrics, but I've heard this verse 6 times now. Please. So they're stuck in that. I think that if they started going, we're good at these two things. And if this is a riff that belongs in an ass kicker, write an ass kicker. Kick up the tempo, all hands on deck. Let's punch it in the face. If this is slow and moody and I need to recite the entire history of the, you know, the Mongol hordes, then I'm going to go over here and do that. But yeah, I feel like they just kind of took all their cliches into one thing. And now that's what you're going to get right down the middle. And that's what's kind of killing them right now. There isn't ups and downs. There's just a very even center, you know, with no dynamic in it. And, you know, Priest, they had the one formula. They're not going to give you a lot of that. It is banger after banger. One, you know, if you were drinking beer on the first one, you're drinking another on the second one. You know, have one to crack for every song. Because, you know, we're heading out to the highway, and, you know, that's the way it's going to go.
Would you change the
decision?
decision?
Think about it.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, you just don't have to think about it, you know?
No, and sometimes that's enough. And, you know, like you said, if Maiden is thinking metal, I don't want to think. I want to rock. It's that simple sometimes. I was going to ask you, would you change the decision for the Hall of Fame?
Viewing it from what I just said, no.
I was about to say, yeah.
Yeah, they're absolutely deserving of it. I'm not saying only one deserves to go in there. They're both. Again, you know, we're debating in between Godfathers.
Yeah.
But I do think that, you know, we're unfortunately in danger of starting to lose that generation of artists. And one is definitely showing its age harder than the other. So, you know, take care of them before they sign off. And I think Maiden has another album and tour in them. I don't see it with Priest. I genuinely don't. I think this is the one they're going to hang it up on. You know, we may get another album. but I just can't see, people accepting Faulkner and maybe Sneap, and if Rob's still able to pull it off at all, and just don't Rolling Stones me with the Priest.
No, and I don't want to put any musician in a box and say you shouldn't make music anymore, but the music Priest were making is a young man's game. The high energy and all of that stuff, but you can't, I don't know, I'm putting my foot in my mouth, I feel, but it just feels like it's a young man's game. That's just my opinion.
I don't think the music is necessarily, because I think they've done a good job of coming back with it. The rigors of touring is.
Yeah.
You cannot be pushing 70 years old and playing 5 nights a week. It's too much. There's a certain point when you have to realize, you're just not physically cut out to do that. You might be able to go in and I almost feel like that's the better thing of going in and going, okay, we've established what we do. We might not tour anymore, but I can summon up that righteous fury to go into a studio and cut the fuck loose when I haven't done anything for 6 months and give it my all and give you another something. I am there buying that album. But being able to run across a stage and, the 40 pounds of leather trench coat and, screaming at the top of my lungs when, my knees are giving out, my energy isn't where it used to be, and I got to work out, 2 hours a day to keep everything moving. Yeah, it's unrealistic to expect that of them. And it doesn't mean that it's, oh, well, metal's only for a young guy or something. Like I said, I still am amazed that, these older bands are still kicking the living shit fury-wise out of younger bands. But it's pure physicality because, that to me is, you're not even talking about music anymore. You're talking about athletics.
Yeah.
I would no more expect Michael Jordan to be doing nothing but net at 70 years old than I would Halford pulling this off. But if he came back for an all-star game or something, I could see him absolutely embarrassing some young kids and being like, and walking off. Totally fine with that. But yeah, the touring aspect of it, I think that's where they're going to show their age the hardest. And I think it's a cool thing, for them to get this now because they are on tour. They are, still doing it, and to be able to receive the award while they're going, we are still the Priest. You can come see us live. We're still putting it out. We're spitting fire. We take our award. Thank you very much. And then you wrap instead of like coming back out of retirement. I feel like that would be, so I feel like justice wise, that's in there. Let place it so they can go out on top, take their award. Thank you very much. And then they exit stage left, and then Priest or Maiden has a little more time in them. So
I saw Maiden a couple of years ago, and like you said, it was sold out. The whole arena was filled from top to bottom, front to back. They were running around this massive stage all night for like 2 hours. I don't know. They went on for hours. They were there for ages. Didn't slow down. Theatrics, athletics, and it was so impressive. Like to see Maiden, they weren't phoning it in live-wise. It was crazy just to see a band of that age performing to that level of agility and athletics. So yeah, I mean, they're still doing it, and I presume they're still doing it now on this new tour. And good for them. Good. They're putting, they're setting a benchmark of what can be achieved.
Totally. And listen up, all you younger musicians or people looking to make a career. I think there's one unspoken thing in between, because I'm always going to come from the music business and, that kind of perspective, having been in those trenches, that is a big difference in between the two bands. And I think has to do with a lot of the success too, is that flat out Iron Maiden's branding and marketing is just miles above Judas Priest.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
when you see, it doesn't even have to say Iron Maiden, but when you see those letter characters that have been used in a ton of different things, you know immediately Iron Maiden.
Mm.
I bet even a lot of metal fans, if I told, like, woke you up out of bed real quick and said, image the Judas Priest logo, like they would, it's just not as recognizable. It's not as strong a trademark. They're having a mascot, a recurring, a recurring theme of someone you identify with visually is, I mean, it's fantastic to have that. Having the Eddie thing and him being constantly reinforced, album covers, t-shirts, comes out on stage, just, it's everywhere. This hallmark of you see that lettering style and that weird weathered face of his, and you know exactly who, from 50 yards away, you can identify it. And I think that goes to show in this, and I think this will set it apart too. When you see kids or adults all wearing metal shirts and stuff, how many Judas Priest shirts do you see? And how many Iron Maiden shirts do you see?
I mean, we've got to think about context here, but I don't know. Me personally, I've never had a Judas Priest t-shirt. I've had a couple of Maiden t-shirts, but I'm biased, like I said. But if you're looking at, I don't know, like a metal festival, a general festival where you'd have a mix of every other t-shirt, I don't know, you would find it'd be very difficult to find one Priest t-shirt out of the whole crowd.
I can't remember the last time I saw somebody wearing a Priest t-shirt.
I'm sure I've seen it, but
it's been a long time. But like, you can go here to a chain like Target, or like our just mid-level, you might be a little broke type of stores, and you can buy an Iron Maiden t-shirt.
Yeah,
the marketing is that strong, and I think that's got something to do with it too. It's cool images. It's like we talked about with the culture of metal and stuff. There's a culture to liking Iron Maiden. I have that logo. I have that freaky character who looks all crazy and looks great on t-shirts, and the album cover looks batshit. And I know there's, along with the music, it's like, what's Eddie going to look like this time? What's he going to be doing? He has a gun. Oh, now he's like a mummy, or, they've a whole that your branding has turned into an entity unto itself, and there's a mystique around it. So when it comes to that edge, I mean, Maiden has been brilliant with that stuff. The fact that they have half trademark in their visual presence and half reinvention.
Yeah.
There was always the ridiculous spandex thing, and, Harris always has the blue and white combo of some sort or something. But like Dickinson will have like the kind of wrestling top every once in a while. And then all of a sudden he's wearing like the poet tunic. And then he's, there's this, pieces of reinvention that go each time. So they're very much conscious about it, even though, again, Priest, you have the leather and studs, you have the motorcycle and the Marshalls. It's not
unique.
It's not as unique, and it's not something where, like, I don't wonder what Rob Halford's going to look like on each album. I don't wonder what, like, I'm not even concerned with what the album cover is going to look like. But I'm going to wonder, oh, what's Eddie doing this time? And, how cool are the shirts going to be? And, so I think that I can't help but think that has a part into their success as well, is when, you turn yourself kind of into the Apple of heavy metal, this brand presence that everybody knows and lines up to see. And every time you launch something, people just run for it.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it in that way, but you're dead right. I can't think of any other band in this genre that has a mascot as big as Eddie. And it's sort of, I don't know the best way to describe it, but it's kind of like a comic book character where you have like you said, like this week he's a mummy, next week he's a redcoat, or whatever he's wearing, and now he's in the army, and now he's fighting aliens and spiders. Do you remember Mighty Max? It's like a kid's cartoon from the 90s. And anyway, do you remember Polly Pocket?
Yep.
Okay, fine. They were these little toys. It might be a British thing. They had these toys, similar to Eddie. Like every toy had a different theme: Egyptian, alien, robot, like all of these different things, and it was memorable. And you're like, what's the next one gonna be? And that's such an exciting hook. What they're gonna do next? And I can't think of any other band where I'm like, what are they gonna do next? And I think that whole vibe of Maiden, that probably is what helped propel them, because even their stage shows now, like they keep changing their stage shows. Like they have, when I saw them, they had a Spitfire on stage, and then you have like Eddie come out, and I don't know, it's crazy. I can't think of any other band where, like you said, what are they going to do next?
Yeah. And that's the thing about image and marketing. You see small imitations of it all the time with, Slipknot and their masks changing. And, I don't feel like there's enough bands that pay attention to that. And whether you like marketing or not, it's crucial. And I think, musicians now need to get back into that thing of stop overexposing yourself and start creating mystery and anticipation again. Because that's what people are interested in, and it's what makes you not disposable. These guys, these guys are the godfathers of, the second wave of metal, and they're still out touring when half of these new bands can't even get booked for, a full regional tour in the US. So it goes to show, be smart about it, get your images together and have something that people look forward to that goes with your music. You have to create the club of us, a metal community within a metal community. And I think that all those pieces are kind of what I think gives Maiden the edge. And, over as a full band experience, not just a musical thing. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. But for some reason, and I don't know whether it's just respect of the godfathers of metal, that I still think if you pressed me right now, I would still say Priest. And I don't know why. Like, because you're right. I mean, Maiden tick all of the boxes, but for some reason, Priest, I don't know. Just Priest get my vote. I don't know why.
It's just because you have to defy me. That's what it is always.
Maybe we need to keep everyone on their toes.
Yeah, exactly.
And keep the mystery going. Who's gonna agree with who, and who's gonna keep fighting? Yeah, this is our own mystery.
Yeah, so I think that'll be a good place to leave it for responses in comments or on YouTube or in the constant death threats that I'm sent. Tell us, Priest or Maiden? Of
Priest
course, if
or
you
Maiden?
argue with me, you're wrong. But which and why, and state your argument, because Lord knows for the past hour we have. So I think that'll be a fun one to leave open to everybody, and I think it's a good place to wrap it there. So thanks again for joining us. And again, Rodney McGee on YouTube, Alfie at Witchbase. And
that's the one.
As always, videos, reviews, content, and just general wackery going on. We'll catch you there or on the channel specifically for the podcast or on streaming coming at you. So with that, I will sign off. Thanks again for joining us. I'll see you next time.
See you later.